Hello, watcher listeners. I guess it is just watchers now, I guess, right? So, hi everybody. Hello, welcome to our
I hope they're
our next.
listening too.
I guess they're listening to the video,
Probably a
right?
terrible
But there's
show.
no, we're no longer purely audio anymore, right? Is that true?
This is
Just to-
true, yes. Yeah.
Well,
It would seem a
anyway,
shame to waste this handsomeness on the airwaves alone.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, airwaves.
Yes.
Yes.
Heard of
Okay.
them, surely.
the yeah. So it's a face for radio, right? So yeah. Okay. So
Speak for yourself.
okay. Well, anyway, here in the Magic Morning Wood, we talk movies. Isn't that
Mm,
right, Clive?
that is right, Ron.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We didn't introduce ourselves. I'm Ron, and with me is
Me.
you,
Yeah.
Clive Davies.
No.
And as you can see, Clive is gearing up for Halloween as a hoarder.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah,
It's a
I see your
difficult
Halloween costumes coming along.
it's a difficult costume to take on the road, though. To
Yeah,
be
it is,
honest.
but it's sort of like a online only, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So instead you're going with like the hoarder slash pedophile. Is that what the whole image is?
See, this is just offensive to men with beards now.
No, yeah, not with beards with men with beards are fine. It's just you.
Oh, well, in that case,
Yeah,
it's a fair cop.
right. Is comedy gold, man. Comedy gold.
Oh, man.
So
Yeah.
right. All right. So anyway, we talk movies, and we usually react to whatever movie we talked about last,
Mm.
and that way helps us to have like a thin connection. So our last movie we talked about was The Life of Brian, Monty Python's Life of Brian, and so we both chose a connection to Life of Brian,
Mm.
and because it was my choice, I went first. So my choice was A Fish Called Wanda from
Mhm.
1988. Probably will say 87, but
Why would I do that?
I don't know because
That would be
you
that
always say 1 year earlier than it actually is. So
that
uh,
that would infer that I am in some way finicky or pernickety about such things, which isn't the case. I think you'll agree, Ron. Yeah.
right. So it is the 88. You agree?
Oh, it is, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So written by John Cleese and story by Charles Crichton and directed by Charles Crichton and technically kind of John Cleese as well. Apparently uncredited. He was an uncredited director. Starring John Cleese and Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Kline, Michael Palin, as well as some other. Yeah, so this is of course the connection being John Cleese and Michael Palin, of course, and yeah, and so this was. So was this you've seen this before, I assume, Clive?
Yes, because this would have been a big a big film back in the day, and also one. So we talked a little bit before about how anything related to the Pythons gets quite a lot of attention.
Sure.
Okay, but I think this was worldwide though. This
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember this being a big one when I was 11. I guess this came out when I was about
because
11. So
I was wondering about this. I was wondering if, so for instance, the film John Cleese made before this one, Clockwise, is that a film you're familiar with?
no, I didn't know that one. Yeah.
Oh, see,
So
I was thinking, I think that was a good example of one of those films that pretty much everyone of us, maybe now not of a certain age, had seen that film in the UK, but that one didn't necessarily travel
yeah, as
abroad,
well.
whereas everyone of a
Well,
certain
Clockwise
age
was an entirely British cast.
yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what Clockwise was. I think he was John Cleese played a teacher who was very strict about time or something, and he finds himself late for some sort of and it's a bit of a rites of passage story. I think there's a teenage girl involved, or I can't remember but it's just one of those films that I think, like, yeah, would play a lot on television in the UK and everyone knew it. Whereas
Right.
I think in the rest of the world, people
Yeah.
maybe have.
Well, I think this one had Jamie Lee Curtis and Kevin Kline, so it ended up being a little bit more
Right.
like
Right.
palatable for Americans, I guess, right? And I believe I can't remember my exact timeline, but I believe this actually was my introduction to the Pythons
Okay.
in general. I don't think I saw a Python movie or show before this. So I think this was my introduction
Mm.
to any of the Pythons, and then was sort of my gateway into the Monty Python in general. So
Did you see it in a theater? No, you would have been a bit too young, probably, would you?
I don't believe I did. I don't remember though, to be honest. I have no memory. I think it was probably a video watch. I think so.
I don't know this. I should know this to my great shame. How does it work in? Is it a similar system to the American system where if it's like an R, you can go into the theater with your parent or something? I know.
Your parent.
NC
I
17.
believe that's the case. I
Okay.
can't really remember, to be honest, but yeah, I think that was the case that you could see an R movie. But was this an R movie?
No, no,
According
no.
to IMDb, it's a G movie, but that doesn't seem right. I don't think it
No,
was a
I'm
G
guessing it
movie.
must have
I can't imagine it was a G movie, but that's what the rating on IMDb
been
is. But
PG-13, I would have thought.
yeah, something like
Feels
that.
like
So
a PG-13,
yeah.
especially in 1988 PG-13. Oh, hang on though. When did the PG-13 come in? Because my memory isn't the first big major PG-13 film Batman, which is year
Which would have been the
after
year
this.
after this, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, no, but anyway, it's not necessarily a film I can imagine kids would
Huh.
go unaccompanied, maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's certainly like it's funny like this movie like watching it now like oh it's like I can't believe like my parents let me watch this when I was 11. You know, there's a lot of stuff in there. Is like I was like I can't believe like I even got any of this when I was 11. So yeah, it's a different time I guess, right? So um yeah, so basic summary I guess is it's sort of a crime comedy, I guess, right? I guess you would call it, right? Where Lee Curtis and Kevin Kline, Michael Palin are bank robbers, and they've stolen diamonds, and they're and also who and the other guy. Who's the other guy?
That's what I was just looking up now because I
Yeah,
didn't write him down, but he is.
Tom Georgeson.
Is that who it is?
Yeah, he played George, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, Tom Georgeson.
Okay. He's a familiar
Yes.
looking face, but
Yeah, I don't know him at all.
yeah, he's in a lot of TV, it seems. So
Yeah.
I just know that I must have seen the face in various
Well,
things.
I thought maybe he must have been like a real famous like British actor, but no, you don't know him. No.
No, the name's not. I'm just looking down his credits as well. There's nothing like.
On IMDb, he doesn't even have like a headshot, so
Yeah.
you know that
I mean,
that
he was in the miniseries GBH with Michael Palin. So maybe that's what he might be most well
the
known.
connection. Yeah.
And yeah, he's in a whole bunch of episodic TV, an episode here, an episode there. He's on some episodes of Doctor Who, for example. And but no, he's not a. But although he looks, I tell you who he looks like is he looks a little bit like the younger actor who was a villain in a recent Mission Impossible film. I think he's got like a.
Oh, okay.
He's got like a.
Yeah, he had the kind of look of a like a Pierce Brosnan era Bond villain. Yeah, I guess.
He looks like a crim.
Yeah.
He looks like a crim.
Crim. Is
Yeah.
that short for criminal?
Yes.
Is that a British slang?
Yeah.
Crim.
He's
Okay.
got a crim's face, isn't he?
Yeah. So well cast in here. In that case, he was the kind of the I guess the leader of the gang of the bank robbers.
Yeah.
So to speak. But of course you find out that they're all about kind of wanting to double cross each other, or that then none of them really know each other, and yeah, and so they're all kind of playing each other off, and so Kevin Kline and Jamie Lee Curtis are so Jamie Lee Curtis has been kind of playing George as being pretending that to be his sort of fling, but it really she brings in Kevin Kline as her quote unquote brother, but is actually her lover, who also she's planning to double cross, and et cetera, et cetera. And Michael Palin is in love with Jamie Lee Curtis somehow, and then but he's involved too. And anyway, so they steal these diamonds, and George and they double cross George and get George caught, but George sort of had rightfully assumed he was going to get double crossed, so he hid the diamonds and trust Michael Palin to hide the key to the safety deposit box where the diamonds are kept. And Michael Palin hides it in like a treasure chest in his fish tank with his beloved fish, and he's an animal lover. And then
he's like a militant animal lover as well, isn't he? He's like,
yes,
it seems like it's alluded to that he might be a part of some sort of, those groups who like break into vivisection labs and liberate, testing animals and stuff like that, right? Because he's got posters and things, and
right. And so, of course, Kevin Kline and Jamie Lee Curtis are trying to get where the deposit box is. So they're trying to, it's, variety of capers to try to figure out where these diamonds are. And so they bring in John Cleese, who's the barrister. And for the non-British, that means lawyer, I guess.
It's a person who makes coffee, I believe.
Yeah. Barista, right? The barrister barista. And he's kind of like the very dry barrister who's taking George's case and is defending him. Defending him? Defending him, yeah. And so Jamie Lee Curtis tries to seduce him to kind of get more information out of him, trying to find the diamonds, etc., etc. And and so hilarity ensues.
Or not.
Or not in this particular case. And anyway, there's lots of kind of, it becomes quite kind of
farcical, isn't it? I suppose
farcical, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, quite farcical. A lot of like farce elements and mistaken identities and
black comedy, because if you
black comedy, lots of sex, and sex, sort of implied sex, and Jamie Lee Curtis has like a thing for Italian, and it makes her really horny whenever anyone's Italian. So there's that. And Kevin Kline plays the kind of this sort of like unscrupulous kind of crim, I guess, you could say, who's also really, really egotistical and full of himself, and has a but is quite stupid, but has like a little chip on his shoulder for being called stupid, and so that becomes.
To be, I don't blame you. I think you would be egotistical and full of yourself if you were married to Phoebe Cates, right? I think that that would do things to you.
Sure. Anyway, so at the end, Jamie Lee Curtis ends up falling for John Cleese because he's such a looker, and John Cleese leaves his family.
Because John Cleese wrote the script.
Yeah.
And is an executive producer as well.
Yeah. And John Cleese basically abandons his family to run off with this woman at the very end with the diamonds. So
but it's okay because they're horrible, right? He's painted them as horrible. So it's a very, very John Cleese look at the world, I think.
Yeah. My wife is not kind to me, so it's okay that I abandon her and my daughter to go off with this random woman with diamonds. So
one of the several ways that this film hasn't dated particularly well, I think.
So anyway, so I'm gonna put off to you what was your experience with this movie?
So I was
past and present.
Well, I was really quite surprised watching it this time. Like my memory of it's not like it's one of my favorite films or anything like that, and I don't think I even saw the sequel, Fierce Creatures, I don't think. But I just remember it being on television when I was a kid, and thinking it was quite funny. And like you said as well, it was, when you're a kid, it's just kind of naughty enough to have that extra flavor as well, and the black comedy and all that. And my memories of it were that was pretty good little comedy. Everyone seemed to like it. Like it was one of those films universally like. Again, Kevin Kline won an Oscar for it, which was something I
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
kind of astonishing as well. But
yeah.
so I sat down with it thinking, oh, this will be, amusing. I thought, it'd be pleasant to revisit it. And I was quite shocked how not very funny at all it is. Now, for me, at least, I was
Yeah.
genuinely surprised, like, wow, I'm not laughing at all. There's nothing funny in
Yeah.
it, and some bits are even actively a bit annoying. Mr. Klein, for example, is I know he's supposed to be annoying, but he was so annoying, and I think the things that he was supposed to be funny weren't, like the repeated asshole thing, like
Oh,
that wasn't funny, and yeah, no, I was quite surprised. I didn't hate, it wasn't like really irritating or got under my skin, I think, but I was genuinely quite shocked. I thought there'd be a few laughs in there, right, at the very least, but I don't think I laughed at anything at all, I don't think. Like, I was quite surprised, and to your point as well, yeah, like quite how dated some of it is. Like, because I was reading about, when it first came, apparently Michael Palin, whose father had a stammer, had got props for his sensitive portrayal of the stammering, and I thought, really, that's pretty broadly comic to me. At least that's how it plays, right? Like,
yeah.
so yeah, I was quite taken aback how dated this, and I was wondering, is it me or is it the film? No, it's not you, it's me. I didn't know. I'm not quite sure. Maybe a bit of both. But how about you then, Ron? How did your
Yeah,
past
I think
compare?
our experiences were quite parallel this time. We were pretty similar. I think that,
Oh, okay,
yeah. So it was the same thing that I remember this being like one of my favorite comedies from when I was a kid, and
okay.
thinking like when I was like 11, 12 years old, whatever it was when I saw this, it was hilarious. And like to this day still quote, asshole sometimes,
Oh, okay.
like, when I'm angry at someone, I'll use that. I'll use Kevin Kline. And I remember having in my mind that Kevin Kline in this movie was like one of my favorite movie characters of all time. Like it's
Hmm.
like it was up there. I remember like I was just thinking that he was just really, really just a really interesting portrayal that was like really like a standout, and it was like a real, I don't know what it was, but his character stuck with me over the years as being like, Kevin Kline and Fish Called Wanda. I mean, that's
Clearly,
like
you're
it
not
was,
alone. He won an Oscar,
yeah,
right?
he won an Oscar for it at the time, right? So, and I remember to the point where I remember when do you remember years later they did Midsummer Night's Dream, and Kevin
Oh,
Kline
yeah,
played
yeah.
Bottom.
Yes,
He
yeah.
played Bottom, and I remember being shocked because I actually played Bottom in college and in university, and and Bottom is basically this character, right? Is
Hmm.
he's like a an idiot, a buffoon that doesn't know that he's a buffoon. That it's basically that's Kevin Kline in this movie is basically based off of Bottom, which is based off of comedic alerting characters and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like the idiot that doesn't know he's an idiot, right? So I mean that's the
I
the
consider you my butch bottom, by the way.
Butch Bottom.
Yeah, you're my
What
butch
does that
bottom.
mean?
Well,
What does
I'm
that mean?
the top, you're the bottom, but you're a butch bottom. You tell me how you like it.
To the left, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, I think it was so I remember being a really great example of that kind of character and just being sticking with me. And when he got cast as Bottom, I was like, oh, that's perfect. It'll be just like Fish Called Wanda. And then I remember being really, really astonished and taken aback that his his Bottom in that Midsummer Night's Dream version was very, very different. It was really like kind of like understated and sensitive and not what you would assume Bottom would be at all. And I
Mm.
was like, why wouldn't he have done what he did during Fish Called Wanda? Because he does that so well. And I would associate that character or that character type with Kevin Kline being like the ultimate example of an actor being able to pull that off. And then even to the point where that character stayed with me so much that I was shocked that he didn't do it with a character that should have been that way, right? So but yeah, so when I went back and watched it this time, I was like, oh, great, Fish Called Wanda, I get to go watch. I haven't seen it in many years. It's a good connection. I haven't seen it. Go see Kevin Kline again. And the same thing, I was like, wait, why am I not laughing at this movie at all? Like, I was like,
Right.
what's happening here? I was like, I used to love this movie. I was like, it was like one of the funniest movies ever. And I was like, I didn't laugh. Same thing. I don't think I laughed even once in this
I
go
think it
around. So
definitely might be the world has changed thing though, because
I guess so. Yeah.
because yeah, like we said, it was universally loved as well, right? It was
Yeah.
like you look back at reviews and they were all, everyone just thought it was really, everyone thought they'd knocked it out the park with it, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder how many people actually who haven't gone back and watched it in a long time. I wonder how many people would also have the same experience of it being a letdown. I suspect
Yeah.
we might not be alone.
Yeah. I'm guessing it just maybe does it again. It's an example of it doesn't hold up. I mean, even Kevin Kline, who I thought had this sort of like, oh, Kevin Kline in that movie was so great. Even he, it wasn't quite as annoying to me as for you, in like actively annoying for myself. I mean, but it was a little bit. It wasn't as like nuanced, or not nuanced is the wrong word, but it wasn't as
It's not witty, is
it
it?
wasn't a standout as I
Right.
remember it being. Like it was just kind of like, oh well, this is just kind of like a, and maybe it's just because it's been done so many times since then in other ways. Maybe I'm just kind of not used to it, but I don't know. I just it stood out for me so much over these years, and it didn't stand out this time at all. So I'm not sure what it was, but
Yeah, I mean the whole thing, the way they paint kind of John Cleese's happy wife and daughter.
yeah,
It's just like that's really, and then
played by his real life daughter.
yes, and then the whole Jamie Lee Curtis thing as well is just seems tonally kind of all over the place, and
Uh,
yeah, you don't
and
really have that kind of role in. I don't know.
yeah, because the thing with the Jamie Lee Curtis part as well is that she's not a likable character, but
not
you're
at all.
supposed to be
Oh,
you're supposed to be rooting for her, and she
yeah.
kind of wins at the end, and you're kind of supposed to be like, yay! But I was like, but I didn't really like her, so
No, she's
why do I
playing
care? Why do I
everyone.
care that she wins at the end?
Yeah,
It's sort of, yeah,
her character's kind of a bit kind of bland as well.
yeah,
she's supposed to be sexy or whatever and all that, but other than that, she doesn't have a strong enough personality for her to be like a likable villain or something like that, right?
yeah, yeah,
She's just kind of there, and yeah, it's a really interesting example of just something just seeming, I don't know, like you've been shown like something in a museum from the past that people used to do with this kind of thing, and you're
yeah,
like, wow, people were weird in the old days. Like, look what people used to do. But I'm old enough to remember it the first time.
mm,
It's still totally
yeah,
alien to me. Like, I don't really get it anymore. And like like the clip they'd always show on television as well, like the bit where they're in the rented house and he's dancing about and kicking his underpants, and then the family come in and he covers
right,
genitals. I remember that like being like that would be this clip they would show, and you'd be, ah, that looks hilarious.
yeah, yeah.
You watch that scene now and you just it just seems quite pathetic and
Yeah, yeah. And also, I was like, oh, I felt bad for those people, like with this naked guy there. And I was also quite confused, like why were they there? Why did he think that? I thought it was his house.
that's what I mean. It just
Yeah,
seems
yeah. I was like, wait a second, but he said that they rented it. He's like, oh, okay. Well, then I was like, wait a second, I'm confused. Why is
yeah,
this even happening?
it seemed like such a poorly written scene. Like we just shoehorn this in. We got to have a scene where John Cleese sticks his schlong in a little kid's face. That'll be comedy gold, right? Uh, it's
Yeah,
just funny. It's just funny how things have kind of not that it's offensive, but it's just like I don't know. I don't know. It just seems like a very unsophisticated. It's interesting as well because if you compare it, like so, Life of Brian 10 years earlier,
right.
you compare that right? And it's like, wow, it's
Yeah,
you see
yeah,
very
night,
primitive
yeah,
somehow.
night and day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got
And I
Charles
guess maybe
Crichton.
it's because he didn't have the whole all the pythons to do it together, I guess, right? Maybe because there was like a writing team rather than just him.
I guess I don't know. And you got Charles Crichton. I think it's the last thing he directed, and he's famous for like he directed all those classic Ealing comedies back in the 50s and 60s. So he's got the comedy chops as well, right? But yeah, but
But to be honest, I'm also showing movies that I loved as a kid to my kids,
yeah.
and almost all of them don't hold up, which
Oh,
is
really?
which is really interesting. That it is, just add this to the list of movies that don't hold up. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the world has changed, and I don't know if it's the world has changed or I've changed, or because even like my kids, like when I would think was hilarious when I was a kid, I'd show it to my kids now, and there's like I don't get it. Like there's funny, right? So it's got to be the world that's changed rather than the movie or myself uh because they're seeing it through the same eyes I guess I would have, at least age wise. But yeah, so I don't know. I guess it's just things don't
Yeah,
things don't last. It sort of makes you sad about like the
yeah.
impermanence of things, I guess, a little
But
bit.
some things last. That's the thing. That's the thing, though. But
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, yeah. Life of
who knows
Brian,
what
I
the
guess. Was
secret
so.
formula is, right? So because
Yeah,
obviously the context is changing around us all the time, and we don't even notice. So in terms of that, like, yeah, your children would be growing up with totally different cues around them for what is funny,
sure.
what isn't funny, what is, and you don't even notice it, right? You just
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the
of course. Yeah,
context. But then all of a sudden, yeah, like you watch something from back in the day, and it just holds up beautifully, and some things even kind of improve with age. And then yeah, just something like this just somehow is yeah, and I don't think you can. It's surprising what you would think lasts doesn't, and vice versa, right? It's
yeah,
very, uh, yeah, you don't know until you put it on and you find out, oh yeah, this is no.
yeah. I guess not.
Uh,
Yeah.
Stephen Fry pops up in this as well. I'd forgotten he's in it
Uh,
right at the very end, right? He's the guy
right,
at the airport who gets clonked on the head.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So there we go. A fish
yeah.
called WANDA uh, has been removed from the place in the pantheon.
Pantheon of beloved movies as a child, I guess. Right. So yeah,
Yes, but again, not necessarily because of I don't think it's so much an issue of it being inappropriate. It's just
mm.
not funny.
It's just yeah, just something about the comedy doesn't hasn't held up through the years, I guess. Yeah. So
Okay, right.
all
So
right.
we shall move on to my.
But I mean, it's good to revisit these movies at least to see that things have
Oh,
changed. I guess.
it's a certainly an educational experience.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah.
sure.
So, my choice, I went via Handmade Films, the company set up by George Harrison and others, basically to get Life of Brian made because I just wanted to see it. I don't know why I'm doing him with a Birmingham accent, but it's because I can't do a Liverpool one, I think.
Also, there's a lot of shoulders.
Would
Would
you
you
see it?
see it?
Would you see it? I just wanted to see it. Um, anyway, and handmade films kind of became a thing, right? Through the 80s and 90s, they were the handmade films logo was on a bunch of kind of interesting films and some films that have become cult favorites, like what Time Bandits, I suppose, is the big one, right? That's the big handmaids films film. Anyway,
And made films, I guess.
and also from 1980, the film I've chosen, The Long Good Friday. Had you ever seen this before, Ron?
No.
Okay, that's good. Interested. So again, within the UK. Sorry, I'm farting, by the way. Can you hear that?
No.
Ah, okay, good.
But
Glad
thanks for pointing it out.
glad I didn't bring attention to it then. Um, yes, within the UK, The Long Good Friday, 1980, directed by John Mackenzie from a script by Barry Keefe. this is kind of considered, you know, in the canon of classic British crime films. This is up there with, you know, things like Get Carter, you know, that kind of thing. Very beloved British gangster film. The plot pretty much is Bob Hoskins is a London gangster who's trying to he's trying to get this huge redevelopment project of the London Docklands underway, right? And he's trying to get a visiting American gangster, as played by Eddie Constantine, to kind of it's hands across the ocean. That's what he says, isn't it? Hands across the ocean, and wants to, you know, it's
Very good, Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, thank you very much. Basically, he's going to do it's going to be a huge boom for everyone involved if he can pull it off, right? Gets the investment. But there's a fly in the ointment, and there's bombs going off and people being killed. And huge spoiler alert, it turns out basically it's the IRA, isn't it? It's the IRA and the Irish. That's kind of, you know, drip fed kind of, but basically they're the big force in the shadows lurking that Bob Hoskins has just totally overlooked. And yeah, so that's kind of the plot. So how did you get on with Long Good Friday?
Well, before we go into that, what's your experience with this movie? What was your
Well, I mean, like
background?
I said, considered a classic, so it's always been there. I remember seeing it at some point when I was a kid and thinking it was a really good crime film. And I've seen it a few times over the years, and it's held up, and it held up this time as well. I think this does deserve its reputation as and oddly enough, in some ways, we were talking about Fish Called Wanda hadn't dated. This film, despite being, it's got like 1980 written through it like a stick of rock, right? Like
Yeah.
very 1980. But somehow, for me at least, I don't think that doesn't date it. It just kind of marks it out as like, this is an example of its time, but it still holds up. I mean, there's a lot of interesting elements I find about it as well, like things. So the music is a big thing for me. The Francis Minkman music, there's something about that which is it's iconic if you grew up watching the film, but also I don't know, it's got that kind of it's I don't know, it's an interesting, it's like the British gangster film coming into the 80s, like, and it's got this kind of theme tune on it, which is almost a bit over the top. It almost, like, at the time it would have felt like something you'd have had on a American TV series or something like that. Or
right.
At the same time, it's, I don't know, I think everything about this film, it like clicks into, so that's exactly the right soundtrack for this film. And Bob Hoskins, depending on the film, he can be really great, and then he can be a bit over the top, but this character is just fucking perfect for this character. I think this kind of big, kind of blustery, kind of you know, he's kind of a fool, really, isn't he? He's kind of but he's fucking dangerous, because that's the other
he's basically Kevin Kline's character, but he's better at it, I guess.
And there's like a scene towards so I would also say Helen Mirren and Derek Thompson co-star in this film. There's like a scene where eventually he loses it, right, and stabs his friend, and it's a brilliant scene, because I think you've kind of almost lost sight, because you've seen him in his foolishness and all this. You've kind of forgotten that he's basically a vicious thug, right? And then when that happens, it's like, oh fuck yeah, I forgot that's who this guy is, right? That's how he built his empire, was through brutish violence, right? But he's
right.
kind of trying to put on this veneer of being very
And the reason why he can't figure out who has it out for him, because
exactly,
he's already offed everybody else, right? So
yeah,
that's the implication you got, right? So
yeah, and he's got no concept that who it could be, and he's got this whole idea, like he's so, like he has that whole, the thing I really like as well is at the end there he has a go at Eddie Constantine's character, but yeah, we're British and all that, a bit more than a fucking hot dog, and then it's immediately undercut, like, and it just yeah, this guy would have fucking voted for Brexit, wouldn't he? That's who this character is.
like,
through.
yeah, he would have been on what's who was the prime minister's name? What was his name again?
Bojo, Boris Johnson. Yeah.
Bojo, yeah, he would have been. I don't think he would have voted for Brexit. I think he would have been on Bojo's cabinet. Right?
Well, he certainly would have been mates with Nigel Farage, I think.
Yeah, he would have been bankrolling Bojo's election.
Yeah, so it's a film
anyway.
that's very difficult for me as to divorce a little bit from. I obviously have strong feelings about this film, and yeah, so it'll be interesting. That's why I was quite pleased to see that you were going in fresh. So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah,
I think in general it was it was a very absorbing, well-made gangster film. I do. I'm not sure if it's necessary to mention, but I did have to stop about 10 or 20 minutes into it and download the subtitles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because for the most part, I cannot figure out what the hell Bob Austin's is going on about, especially when they get into the slang and stuff like that. I was like, I don't know what. It's like it's like another language. So
that's interesting, because I didn't really, I suspected maybe, but I was watching it. I was thinking of that. I was thinking, oh, I think this is fairly regular.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I can kind of guess what they're talking about or the gist kind of thing. But I was like sometimes I would even like watch the subtitles with what he's saying. I was like, I wouldn't even have gotten that was what words were coming out of his mouth. So at the time, so yeah, so that helped a little bit. But yeah, I think, and I guess this was I understand this was Bob Costin's kind of breakthrough role.
Yeah,
yeah. So he definitely inhabited the character perfectly. He was this guy. I can see why this kind of made his career. I thought I was kind of expecting a little more from Helen Mirren. The Helen Mirren. But she was sort of just kind of window dressing a little bit, mostly on this movie. But
yeah, which
she had a little bit to do. But
yeah, I know what you mean. But I think that's the character, though, to a certain extent. She's a little bit the trophy wife who's kind of probably isn't being paid enough attention to.
Right.
And a little bit of the power behind the throne as well. But yeah, no, I know what you mean.
I think she could have been given a little more to do, general. But I mean, I think it was I mean, other than that, it was absorbing. I mean, it was also played out like a mystery as well. Like you don't know who's fucking this guy.
Yeah, it's a very good.
Sorry,
it's a very good script.
Yeah, very good script. Yeah, it's so it kind of kept you guessing. Yeah, I didn't know it was going to go to the IRA. Oh, and he also forgot to mention that a cameo from a non-speaking Pierce Brosnan as an Irish thug. Yeah, so
very young Dexter Fletcher in it as well.
Yeah,
there's a few interesting people in the cast. There's Alan Ford as well, who people will know later on played Bricktop in Snatch, right?
Okay, yeah.
He's in there. And there's a lot of interesting actor faces, and that's another reason I think it has that kind of cult appeal as well, is it's got a few kind of people who are
who became much bigger. Yeah,
well, quite authentic to the criminal underworld as well. Yeah. And it's funny, it's one of those films as well I enjoy when you really like a film sometimes you can just go back to it and you just pick up on little things that you didn't.
Mm.
So there's some really nice. I picked up on the. I really like the cringy stuff this time, where like Bob Hoskins is doing the whole the lad from Stepney and the young man from New Jersey and all that. He's trying to, rally up that kind of shared working class blue collar came up
Uh,
from nothing, and it's just yeah, he lays it on so thick, right?
yeah.
And I thought that was really brilliantly done, because just because so the first time I saw this film is the way it turns out that it turns out to be the Irish. That really did come out of nowhere for me. I was like,
Yeah.
fuck, was not expecting that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I didn't expect it to be the IRA either. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Yeah, and then it turns out that it was all kind of a misunderstanding about one of his. I actually was a little unclear about what so happened. So the guy, one of his henchmen, made some sort of deal, and then that went wrong, and then the IRA thought it was came down from the head, and so started getting their revenge on that, right? So
it's basically Bob Ross is seriously overlooking a major player in his midst that he didn't even think about. It kind of really speaks to a certain arrogance. No,
yeah, I mean, definitely it was great example of like a hubris, right? It's like a
yes, exactly.
it's like he's so involved with himself that he can't see his own weaknesses, you know what I mean? So it's that it's right in front of him. Like literally, it was literally the person he was looking for was right in front of him the whole time, right? So
because that's what pushes him over the edge as well. It's just the fact that he says to him, you're nothing, you're less than the shit on their shoes or whatever, and he doesn't like that, and that's when he goes in for the So the other thing I was quite interested to ask you as well, because obviously you're Canadian, not American, but you come from that part of the world. So did the name Eddie Constantine actually mean anything to you at all? The guy who plays
no.
Yeah, no, he's interesting. Eddie Constantine is one of those. He's probably one of the leading examples of an American actor who was incredibly famous in Europe and no one in America's heard of him.
Yeah, he really seemed like a gangster though.
Yes,
he really had a gangster feel to him though.
But that's why. Back like in the 50s, and he did these played these Lemmy Caution was this character that he played, and he was in a whole bunch, and he was huge in Europe. Even more so on the continent than the UK, I think. But he was a proper box office draw, and to the point that when Godard made Alphaville, he cast Eddie Constantine as Lemmy Caution, it being a very kind of meta kind of throwback to noirs of earlier decades and stuff like that.
I see.
But your average North American never heard of Eddie Constantine, right?
I'd never. I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily an average, but because I was never really into that kind of genre film or time period. But certainly I didn't know him. So
Derek Thompson as well, the other main guy, along with Bob Hoskins, the guy who gets killed at the he's most famous for being on a long-running television series called Casualty.
Casualty, okay.
It was set in a hospital, a casualty ward, which I think is still on. It's been going since like the 80s or something, and he was like the main heartthrob doctor, I think, on that show.
He was Dr. McSteamy and Dr. McDreamy.
I don't know what that is, but
that's what they call like the handsome doctors on Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, okay, is that like the George Clooney and ER kind of thing?
I guess so, yeah. But it's I think it's Patrick. What's his name? He was like an '80s star. What's his name?
I've never seen Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, but he was like an '80s movie star. Patrick. What's his name? I'm sure people. Anybody watching this is probably yelling at the screen if there's anyone watching.
Don't get above our station now, Ron. Ask for too much.
What's his name? Dempsey, Patrick Dempsey.
Ah, okay. I thought you were going to go bigger when you said he was huge in the 80s. I thought you
No,
meant
I said
overstated.
he was like a icon, like sex symbol in the 80s, whatever, right? So
Was
anyway,
he?
so
What was
I
he
think
on in
so.
the 80s?
Uh, he was in, wasn't he in like those John Huston films stuff?
I don't know. Anyway, I think we may have stretched
Can't buy me love. That's right. That's a big one. I know. Can't buy me love.
we
Where
may
he
be
played
stretching the
Ronald Miller. Ronald, I remember that one.
maybe playing the stretching the Patrick Dempsey portion of the show.
Anyway, he's now known as I've never seen Grey's Anatomy either, but I know that they call like all the sexy handsome doctors like Dr. McSteamy and Dr. McDreamy, I think so.
Also, the other guy in this film that you may have recognized, but you can't remember where from. There was a character, if you remember, there was one bit where they're interrogating a black man. Did you recognize him? Did he look like, hang on, I know him from somewhere.
Maybe.
Yeah, this is Paul Barber. He was one of the, much later, he was one of the leads in The Full Monty.
Oh, okay. Paul Barber. Okay, right. Okay.
So I was thinking that's a classic kind of, I know him from somewhere face, but you might not necessarily remember where from, right?
Right. Yeah. I also recognized maybe Brian Marshall. Did you
Okay.
mention already?
I don't think we mentioned him. No, like I
No.
said, there's a bunch of
Yeah. Anyway.
people, yeah. Oh, there we go. So you got on well with the Long Good Friday then.
Yeah, it was quite a good, interesting, good gangster flick, good mystery. Yeah, it was very absorbing all the way through. I'm not sure that I have a lot to say about it in general. I thought you mentioned music. The music was really a standout.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was. All the performances were decent. The script was good. Yeah, it was. It was a good watch. Yeah, but yeah, it was. Yeah. I assume so. I guess this was like a. It felt hmm, like a must have been a big influence on what's his name, the Snatch guy,
Guy Ritchie.
Guy Ritchie. Yeah, I felt like it was probably like a Guy Ritchie inspiration kind of thing.
Well, I think it's probably just one of a bunch of British gangster films that yeah
Mm.
that informed because yeah, so Guy Ritchie kicks off with Lock, Stock, right?
Right.
And yeah, Lock, Stock is very much a kind of, it's like a sort of fetishization of all those
Mm.
British movie tropes,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's and it was, when did that come out? That came out at the very tail end of the whole Britpop, cool Britannia kind of. So in a way, I think those films are they're like,
98. Right.
yeah, they feel a little bit like they're almost like the equivalent.
Also with Dexter Fletcher.
Yes, they're a little bit equivalent of they're taking the Bob Hoskins a bit more than a fucking hot dog. They're taking
Yeah.
it a bit more seriously, and they better watch
Uh,
out because they might get blown up. But yeah, I don't know. It's funny. These things are all cyclical, right? So
right.
yeah, I think the Long Good Friday works as still works as well as it does because it doesn't necessarily fall for that. It doesn't fall in love with its own,
Mm.
British gangster culture
Right. Yeah.
thing, whereas Guy Ritchie's revels in that, and it gets worse as it continues. Like it goes
Right. Yeah.
Stock, Snatch. That's all right. But then when you get to fucking Rock and Roller, you're like, oh fucking hell, this thing is just. I remember hating that film because it was just, the posturing was just too
Yeah.
much at that point, right?
Right. Yeah.
And he's not even the worst. He's not even the worst proponent in a way, because that stuff became so popular and became so
Mm.
bankable. There's a there's a whole world of gangster fucking pictures that never leave the UK, right? They very
Okay.
rarely play anywhere else. But just, yeah, there's fucking loads, and some of them are quite good. And a friend, I know someone who's in some of them as well, and he would be the first to criticize their tropish nature. But there's so many of them, and yeah, Long Good Friday is definitely the film that a lot of those would want to be, right? Would aspire to be.
Right.
Or Get Carter, or in a lighter way, something like The Italian Job or something like that, or
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. Good watch. Thanks for introducing me to it.
Pleasure. Treasure.